Good Wednesday evening. I hope your midweek is phenomenal and you are ready to ramp up your game to head into the weekend. Well, I had something else planned for tonight, but after the last couple days, or actually the last 4 or 5 days, something needs to be addressed here. It really has nothing to do with ag. We're going to be talking mostly politics. But what happened over the last 12 months and what is probably gearing up to happen in the near future, I hope not, but gearing up to, is a level of hypocrisy at a level of leadership that should not even exist. And a word that I didn't even know existed until this afternoon when I was actually switching gears to do this tonight instead of my originally scheduled program. And that's whataboutism. If you're like me, you didn't have a clue what it was. It is the practice of responding to an accusation or a difficult question by making a counter accusation or raising a different issue. And one example they gave was talking about the riots at the Capitol or the BLM riots last year and comparing it to what the Nazis did to the Jews or what the terrorists did to our Twin Towers. One is not the same as the other, and you're trying to divert attention. Now we'll go to what has happened the last few days, which has put us in extremely dangerous times, folks. Jason, great to have you on, as absolutely always honor to have you on. If you haven't been paying attention, and you've been busy, because most of us in ag stay pretty busy, especially with the way the weather's been the last few days, you might have missed this little caveat that a social media platform, which is all about free speech, all about making sure that people have a voice, it's called Parler, was effectively kneecapped like the old mafia used to do to people that they didn't really agree with. Amazon, Apple, Google, and of course everybody piled on after that, effectively kneecapped them. Amazon completely took them off their servers. Apple and Google both took them out of their stores, or their app stores. Heath, awesome to have you on again. Appreciate it. So, folks, we're in dangerous times when free speech is muzzled. And one group gets to determine what is free speech and what is not, what is acceptable and what is not. What happened today with this impeachment trial, well, kangaroo court in my opinion, is inexcusable. Yes, Trump shouldn't have made the comments. He probably won't get much argument from hardly anybody out there that has a little common sense and can actually put some thoughts together. However, he didn't incite a riot. If you're going to say that Trump incited this riot of the Capitol, then there are several prominent politicians that need to be indicted for inciting the BLM riots and Antifa riots that happened over months last year. However, we haven't seen none of that. And any time that I've noticed people try to bring up this fact after the Capitol riots, we get a case of whataboutism. One article that I read in my preparation said, well, the BLM riots had a purpose. They had a reason behind destroying personal property and government buildings. And if you were in Portland, basically creating your own little state or country in the middle of the U.S., a U.S. city. I'm a little confused. If you're like me and you grew up with grandparents who were farmers, at least my grandpa used to tell me what was good for the goose is good for the gander. If you're going to go after somebody for one thing, then you better be willing to accept responsibility when you do the same exact thing. It's also called hypocrisy. And we've seen this out of our quote-unquote leaders for way too long. Folks, America has prospered. America has done exceedingly well, probably better than any country has in history, at least recorded history as far as time goes. But every great power that has existed throughout history has crumbled and eroded from within due to exactly what is happening right now. One, the apathy of the people. Two, a class of people that feel like they are elite and they know how to run your life better than you do. And three, nobody willing to band together and stand together to fight for what is right, what is free, and what built this society to the superpower status it had. It's my opinion, of course, that we really have not had a stellar president since Reagan. And Ronald Reagan had his faults too. But we really have been on a downhill ride here for quite a long time, for 32 years, through several presidents and several Congresses, obviously. We are in worse debt, which if you have kids or grandkids, they have been put in a position that they probably will never see the light of day out of. There's policies in place which do not have the good of the country in mind, but only the good of certain individuals or corporations. We have seen freedom of speech, basically, like I said earlier, muzzled in these last few days. Twitter had a mass banning of people that supported Trump or supported certain things on the conservative side. But yet we're not seeing any traction out of the elected leaders that are supposed to be representing the people. And we keep hearing out of one side of their mouths, we want unity and we want peace and we want to bring people together. But then their actions are diametrically opposed to what they're saying. As I heard one guy say last night, and I didn't share the post, you have to make a decision. Either A, you want unity, so Trump is going to be out of office here shortly. Let sleeping dogs lie and let it go. And let the country get on about its business. Or two, you basically are saying that 70 million people that voted for Donald Trump are wrong. They're on the wrong side of history, and you're going to punish them. It's one or the other, because you can't have both. And when two sides start fighting, who pays the piper? Typically, the people caught in the crossfire, which is going to be our freedoms, which is going to be the American people taking the brunt of it. Most people don't say there's a middle class anymore, but if there is, they're the ones that are going to probably finally be eliminated if there is a middle class. Because to pay for everything that has happened, you devalue the dollar, you print more money, inflation goes up. It's pretty simple. And all of a sudden, we're screwed. So what do you do about it? Glad you asked. One, we start holding our politicians accountable. I've mentioned it before, and I'm going to keep mentioning it. You have to stay on top of them. You have to be a voice. And there is a risk involved with that. You put yourself out there. But as I said last night, we have to get in the arena. We can't get to the end and realize that we were one of those cold and timid souls that accomplished nothing, but just made it through life. Folks, I'm not about just making it through life. I want to savor it. And I do believe I'll go down fighting for the things that I believe and the people I believe in. Because I'll say right here in public that I have a network of people that I will go to bat for. Because I believe in them and I believe in what they can accomplish. So one solution is we always got to get these things out of our lives before we start moving forward in making progress to eliminate them from other aspects of society. It's kind of like the Bible says, we got to get the speck out of our own eye. Or we got to get the log out of our own eye before we get the speck out of somebody else's eye. So do you engage in whataboutism? Do you engage in hypocrisy? If you don't, awesome. Let's move forward. Let's start accomplishing these things that can build our republic back to the level that it should be. If you do, it's something to work on for this year. It's something to start eliminating from your daily going about business. But we definitely need to make our voices heard about this First Amendment, about the power that certain companies have been given to muzzle and dictate what is acceptable and what isn't. Because, folks, we're on a slippery slope to where we go back to the old USSR or East Germany. I hope we don't get to that point. I hope we don't ever arrive at that point. But we are heading down that slope. Noah, great to have you on. I don't know about dark times, Jason, but I know we're headed towards dangerous waters, uncharted waters for most of us in the U.S. we've lived in a bubble um, for too long in this country. We don't realize what else is out in the world. We don't realize what can happen. You know, we see whatever the media has fed us from different parts of the country. But speaking from personal experience, you know, South Korea is a phenomenal country. Very wealthy, done very well. But if you get out into the other parts of the rural areas, there's still a level of poverty there. Thailand is the same way. But I will say one thing about South Korea. You know, yes, we protect them. Yes, we have a massive military presence there. But they protect their borders. They protect what is theirs. And pretty much so does every other country that is wealthy. Could think of the word I'm using, but they protect their borders. They protect what is theirs. But we've allowed this creep into our policies that have allowed for things to happen that never should have. Now, I'm talking about things that started creeping in 100 years ago, 110, 120 years ago. And you have to go all the way back to Teddy Roosevelt and Woodrow Wilson and realize that some of the payment that we're making now started back then. It's just been exasperated by, like I said, since pretty much Ronald Reagan left office. And you may be right, Jason, we may be facing dark times, but I know we're facing uncharted waters and extraordinarily dangerous times. Very dangerous times. But I don't know if you've seen that movie, Courageous. Phenomenal movie if you get a chance to watch it. I would encourage you to find a way to rent it or acquire it some way. But excellent movie. But at the end, I won't ruin it for you. But he asks, "Where are you, men of courage?" Are you willing to stand? Folks, I'm not going to liken this back to 1776 and the Revolution, because I don't believe we're at that point yet. But we have to be willing to pay that price. We have to be willing to stand if it comes to that. Because either you fight or you accept it and die a slave. There's really no two ways about it if we get to that point. And Jason may be right. We may get to that point, and those will be very dark times. Sorry, this is not an upbeat video. This is not really an informational video about ag. But I felt like it was something that, in light of what has happened the last 4 or 5 days, needed to be said, needed to be put out into the ether. Because we have a group of people that are supposed to be leaders, supposed to be taking care of this country because they've been elected by the people, that have demonstrated a level of hypocrisy and whataboutism that boggles even my mind. That that they think that this is okay is even more scary and damning. And nobody's holding them accountable at all. So I would encourage you to get out your paper, get out your pen, get on the internet, look up your senators and your congressmen's addresses, and pen a letter. And after you've penned a letter, wait about 4 days and call them. And make it known that this is not acceptable for our freedom of speech and every other thing that we are guaranteed in the Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights. That we're not going to stand for those to be infringed upon. No matter if they're big donors to their campaigns or not. Because like I said, you either stand or you die a slave. It kind of comes down to one or the other. Well, that's my thoughts for tonight. I welcome any comments, as always. Or if you don't feel comfortable commenting on here, you're more than welcome to give me a call or a text at 515-822-7095. And I'll just reiterate this. Jerica, awesome to have you on. It is a true blessing to have you and Brittany and Jason and Noah and Heath on tonight. But I'm going to reiterate this. If we engage in whataboutism and hypocrisy, or we accept it from the people we're around, we need to rid ourselves of that. And then start working up the ladder. Especially with our elected officials, folks. We can't stand for this. And we can't stand for this partisan politics. Our country cannot take that at this point. We've let this partisan politics BS affect our country. And you know what? I'm going to get on my soapbox. What the hell? Give me 3 more minutes here. I would ask and encourage you to put one other thing in your letter. And that is for them to pass 2 laws. 1, every bill passes on its own merits, not so filled with pork that it has more pork than the actual bill is worth. And 2, to enact term limits without being able to be taken off the platform for everybody as an elected official, without question. Personally, I think 2 terms for senators, 2 terms for representatives is more than ample time for them to actually accomplish something. Because right now, like I've said a few times, and Jason actually reiterated, we're in dangerous times, we're in uncertain times, and we might be headed for dark times. Because somehow a politician who has spent 50 years in Washington managed to get more votes than anybody in history. We got a fundamental problem, folks, and it's only going to be solved by we the people. Have a great night, and we will see you tomorrow night.